Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll go ahead and get started in a few minutes as folks log in. Thank you so much for joining our technical code amendments info session. Appreciate you being here today. Welcome, everybody. I see folks are logging in. We'll get started in a few minutes. All right. We have a full room here today to learn more about our technical code amendments. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll go ahead and kick us off and get us started. I see folks are still trickling in and coming in. Welcome as you join our session. Thank you for joining us today on our Thursday morning. My name is Isis Lopez. I'll introduce myself. I am the Engagement Manager for Development Services Department. We help inform folks of new changes and also help provide feedback on changes that are up and coming. Today, we're talking about technical codes and technical codes amendments. So thank you so much for joining our information session. Next slide, please. Before we get started with today's presentation, I want to make sure that we know what to expect. We will have a presentation where we will overview the upcoming technical code local amendments. And so we'll have a presentation, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. You can use the Q&A function in Zoom to ask questions throughout the presentation. And so we'll be looking at that. We have several folks in the room, so feel free to use that. We will answer them as we go, but know that we will have some dedicated time if we have time as we run through the presentation to run through the questions toward the end. We have several folks here in the room here. We have several subject matter experts from Development Services Department, but we also have some subject matter experts from Austin Energy and from Austin Fire. We have two, for those folks who have been with us for a few years, y'all might know Todd Wilcox. He was our building official. Some of you might know that he is retiring this year, and so we have our two acting deputy building officials, Steve Leach and Alan Wu, here in the room, who will be answering questions and who will be presenting. And so they are here in the room with us. I'll also note that we will be recording. We are currently recording this presentation, and so that will be available in our public meetings page, and we will send it out to folks who registered to the presentation, along with the copy of the presentation as well. So you can have this information readily available. And then lastly, we will try to get to as many questions as possible, but we may not have time to answer all of them. We have a lot of folks in the room here today listening in, so thank you for tuning in. So we might not have time to answer all the questions, but we'll get through them as best we can. And we might also not have all the information. And so what we will do, though, is we will provide a summary of all the questions that are asked, along with the answers as we get them and as we make them available. And we will also have those available to our attendees and to folks who registered to attend. All right. If you have any technical difficulties with finding the Q&A function, please let me know in the chat. While I do look at the chat, it's helpful to use the Q&A function just to make sure with the Q&A function, I can make sure that those questions are answered and we can run through them. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be talking about technical codes. City Council adopted the 2024 technical codes during its April 10th meeting, and they go into effect this year on July the 10th. Next slide, please. A little bit about the timeline. So as I mentioned, on April the 10th, they were approved. We've had several information sessions. Our partners at Austin Fire had a specific session on June the 9th. Today, we are here at our virtual info session to talk about our local amendments. We also have the opportunity for an in-person one, and so if you would like to join us for that, you still can. That is taking place Monday, June 16th in person here in the Permitting and Development Center. So feel free to join us if you have time and if you can. And then July 10th is our implementation date. That is the timeline for us now. Next slide. So Steve, our deputy building official, will overview our changes, but high level, he's going to talk about some of those changes that happen, including the tiny home appendix, natural light requirements, single stairs, just some of the changes that happen, including updates to the energy code and the Wildland Urban Interface Code that will take effect this July. All right, next slide, please. These are the codes that we will overview today. We'll overview the building code, residential code, plumbing code. This is the order in which we'll overview them. Mechanical code, swimming pool and spa code, existing building code, property maintenance code, the energy conservation code, and the international fire code, along with the international wildland urban interface code. And then, as I had mentioned, afterward, we'll have opportunity for Q&A. But if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put those in the Q&A section. Thanks again for joining us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve to talk to us and get us started with the International Building Code. Steve.
Thank you, Isis. Hey guys, my name is Steve Leach. As Isis said, I'm a deputy building official here at the City of Austin. And I'm going to run you guys through the IBC, the residential code, the plumbing code, mechanical, the swimming pool code, and the existing building code. I'd like to, just before we get started, I want to sort of set the expectation here. This presentation is not a comprehensive review of any of these codes. This presentation is really a presentation on the local amendments to these codes, which are either new or which in some cases were deleted between the 21 version and the 24 version. So just to just like I said, to set that expectation. And all right. The International Building Code is a model building code developed by ICC that establishes minimum requirements for building systems to protect public health, safety, welfare, while promoting innovation and affordability in construction. Next slide, please, Nasreen. All right. So changes in the local amendments, starting in Chapter 1, we in the section entitled work exempt from permit, we've changed the electrical requirements so that they refer to the corresponding section in the National Electric Code, which is the electric code that the City of Austin has adopted. So that's a simplification really in that amendment, and it was made to just better correlate the I codes that we use with the NEC. These various sections from Chapter 3 refer to the sections in 305 and 308. Those are actually local amendments that we've dropped. Those sections, Chapter 3 in the IBC is the chapter that establishes the occupancy classification for buildings and structures, and these specific sections deal with educational and institutional occupancies and thresholds of the number of occupants, which determine what classification a specific structure will fall into. And in the past, we had amended those sections to try and align them with state regulations having to do with daycares and things like that. And as those regulations have changed, we've gone back to just the model code. So in many cases, this was in fact, I think in most of these cases, this was simply a matter of changing a number that we had amended to say 6 occupants back to what the root code says, which is 5 occupants. So pretty simple one there. 1204 in Chapter 12, many of you may know may know these changes as the windowless bedroom ordinance. This is actually an amendment that we added to the 21 code after it had been adopted. And so we've carried that amendment forward into the 24 code. And very, very briefly, this is just an amendment that attempts to require more natural lighting in living spaces. Next slide, please. In chapter 16, we've amended the loading requirements for fire truck and emergency vehicle roads, structures, bridges, and we've just to align those requirements with the fire code, so that those requirements are come out of the fire code and that there's not a confusing correlation issue there. In chapter 29, we've dropped amendments that had to do with plumbing fixture requirements, and so we just go by the plumbing code now. And then another one, this 1006.3, this is probably one that many of you are familiar with. This is the single stair provisions that were added through the amendment process during the code adoption. And this is a section and a table in the code that we've added that will allow certain R2 occupancies. R2 occupancies are what we typically think of as apartments. So multifamily, but where multifamily occupancies where the residents are what we call permanent in nature. So not hotels. So in certain R2 occupancies, up to 5 stories, there's various conditions in that amendment. But if the building meets those conditions, then we can allow that building to exist with a single exit stairway. Next slide, please. All right, the residential code. Similar intent and purposes as the building code. The residential code, however, only applies to single family, 2-family, and townhouses. Although we do have a policy memo that allows certain triplex structures to also be reviewed to be looked at under the IRC. Next slide. So we've added a definition of surcharge to be consistent with the IPMC and really just to help us understand when retaining walls require permits. And so that the definition of a surcharge, if I remember, is simply it talks about that there needs to be additional load placed on the retaining wall in addition to simply the earth that it's retaining. In chapter 3 in section 318, we've amended the requirements for egress doors such that in residential construction we will allow either side hinged or pivoted or balanced doors now. The way that the code was written, it only allows side hinge doors. So we've expanded that allowance. In section R322, and I'd like to note that in previous versions of the code, the accessibility and visibility were housed in section 320. There's been some formatting changes in the IRC. So now accessibility and visibility is in R322. We've added some local amendments that should help to facilitate development under the home amendments. For example, we've exempted tiny homes from visitability altogether. And then in section 325 in the residential code, we've added a requirement for air conditioning. And this was an amendment that was added to the property maintenance code. It was put in the building code, the residential code, and the mechanical code. And this is really just to ensure all of the building codes already had a requirement for for heating to maintain a minimum temperature, and it's, you know, we live in the South where it tends to be hotter than it does cold, and so we've added an amendment that establishes a maximum temperature as well, essentially. And next slide. All right, the plumbing code. Um, Unlike the residential and the building code, which are written by the International Code Council, the plumbing code and the mechanical code that we use here in the city are the uniform codes that were written by IAPMO, which is the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials. Next slide. So we've added a definition of laundry to landscape system, and then those irrigation systems are talked about in 614, and then 1503, 10.1, and 10.2 talk more specifically about laundry to landscape irrigation systems and the requirements for those. 321, we've dropped the plumbing code requirements for elevator sump pumps because in the state of Texas, those requirements are dictated by state law. So that section now just refers to the state administrative code that governs elevator sumps. And then 411, 412, and 420 were specific requirements for different types of plumbing fixtures. I believe one was water closets. Forget what the other two were for, but those stipulated things like gallons per flush and things like that, and we've dropped those amendments so that we align with Austin Water's conservation requirements for those elements. Next slide, please. 10073, we've decided to go ahead and allow barrier type trap seals. That was something that historically had not been allowed in the city of Austin. So there's an allowance for them and an indication of the standard that they need to comply with. And then this R101, this is a change in the residential code, and this, how can I explain this change? This change, it allows, the effect of it is it allows a little bit of leniency when it comes to the plumbing in tiny homes. It allows the plumbing in tiny homes up to the building drain, so all of the internal plumbing to be in compliance with the International Plumbing Code rather than the Uniform Code. Next slide. The mechanical code, as I mentioned before, again, this is a uniform code written by IAPMO as opposed to an international code written by the International Code Council. Next slide. So again, here we had some definitions for alternate water source, treatment systems, air conditioner, condensate recovery. Austin Water has fairly recently kind of launched its on-site water recovery system process. And so we've in order to align with those requirements, we've dropped these definitions that we had historically had in the mechanical code. Here again in 318, we've added the requirement for air conditioning to align with the property maintenance code. We've in 405 we've established I hope a little bit easier to understand requirements for residential kitchen exhaust rates based on whether the exhaust device is intermittently controlled or continuous. And then 523 we've added sections that refer to international mechanical code requirements for hazardous exhausts, because in the building code is an international code. The fire code that we use is the International Fire Code. And when both of those codes talk about hazardous exhausts, they refer to the International Mechanical Code. And so really just for correlation's sake, we've inserted those sections of the international code into our mechanical code. Next slide, please. Same thing here, 524, manicure and pedicure stations require exhaust, and the mechanical code provisions from the international code, I think, are a little bit more detailed and clear. So we've inserted those sections from the international code into the uniform code. And then smoke detection controls. Again, this is a case where we've inserted some sections from the international code into the City of Austin's mechanical code. Yeah, next slide. The swimming pool and spa code, an international code. The swimming pool and spa code, I think this has gone into later. Let's just go to the next slide. So a lot of the changes in the international swimming pool and spa code are kind of found in chapter 1, which is the administrative portion of the code, as opposed to the technical provisions. As many of you may know, swimming pools in Texas are regulated by state statutes. There's a couple of different ones, and so we've inserted some provisions into chapter 1 that just reference the state regulations that swimming pools may need to comply with. In 103, we there's a little bit of a I don't say jurisdictional, but there's an administrative kind of line in the swimming pool code such that the Development Services Department administers the code as it relates to residential swimming pools. The Austin Public Health Department administers the swimming pool code as it relates to commercial swimming pools. And so this section just establishes that that distinction. Next slide, please. And then the only other big change in here is that we've inserted some language in here that talks about the dimensional controls and the conditions for using a chain link fence as a required pool enclosure. Next slide. The existing building code is an I code. The existing building code is the code where we start if the project is a remodel or an addition, if it's dealing with an existing structure. Next slide. I think the only change to the existing building code was that we updated the year. So we updated in our ordinance, we updated from the 21 existing building code to the 24 existing building code. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Moses Rodriguez. Moses, it's all yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. My name is Moses Rodriguez. I work for DSD Code Compliance Department, and I'm presenting the 2024 International Property Maintenance Code, the IPMC. So the Property Maintenance Code, you just heard Steve. It's the IRC, and which you use to build homes, and then the IBC to build commercial. But the property maintenance code is what keeps all the properties in maintenance wise to maintain, and applies to residential and commercial. Next slide, please. The amendments that we made was structure unsafe for human occupancy. So we did this in the 2021. We did this this amendment, but now we integrated the cooling facilities, which as we're going to talk about a little bit, and it is reflected in the IRC and the IBC also. But it's basically given an opportunity for us to, when we created this, we're going a lot of properties and we would ask them, hey, the hot water's not fixed or the heater's not fixed. And we would ask them, give us a timeline, give us some kind of timeline of what's gonna happen. So this action plan, by us having this, we're able to site properties, and now we included only cooling facilities. But we had it in place in 2021. Next slide. Definition. We expanded on the presence with continues to structure premises of insects, rodents. We added scorpions and other pests. And also we added definition of surcharge. The vertical load imposed on retained soil that may impose a lateral force in addition to lateral earth pressure of retained soil. Next slide. Infestation. This I knew we had added scorpion and bed bug. So we didn't have in infestation, we didn't have this spelled out. We just had shall be kept free from insect. Well, now we spelled out scorpion and bed bugs and rodent infestations. Structures in which insects or rodents are found shall be properly exterminated by approved processes that will not be injurious to human health. After pest elimination, proper precautions shall be taken to prevent reinfestation. This is the part that Steve mentioned that they were aligned with us because in the August 2023, there was a resolution through council to implement a code. And this is something that we modeled from Dallas, requires property owners to provide and maintain air conditioned equipment capable, habitable rooms to at least 15 degrees cooler than the outside temperature, but not exceeding 85 degrees. So we had a temperature set for heat all these years, but we never had one for cooling. And now we've adopted this. So as of July 10th, we'll be able to enforce this. Where before you could have built a house, you could have gotten a final without air conditioning. Well, now you won't be able to. You will have to meet this requirement. Also in the IBC, you could have gotten a certificate of occupancy at a restaurant without AC. Well, now it is required. All habitable rooms. Next slide. We put this made this clarification in the 604.2 in the electrical. The size of usage of appliances shall be served as basis determine the need for additional facilities. Shall be served 3-wire, 120 to 240 volt, single phase electrical services have a minimum of 100 amps. Only if electrical system is defective or damaged. So we had a house today that was built in 1965 or this week, and there were some electrical issues that happened. A car actually caught on fire and then burned their power line. But because their line's damaged, they do have to bring it up to 100 amps today. But if the system's still working, it's a 65-year-old home and it's still working and it has no defective or damage, it can continue and it won't be in violation. This is only if a defective or damage. Next slide. I think turn it into to Austin Energy.
But yes, we have Patricia.
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Pat Chawla. I'm with Austin Energy Green Building, and I'm a residential manager for the residential green building team. And I'm going to talk to you about the energy code this morning. So the energy code is another of the model building codes, like many of the others we've already heard about today. And this one is from the ICC, International Code Council. And it specifically is established to make minimum energy efficiency standards for both residential and commercial buildings. And like the others, we update it every 3 years. Next slide. First off, I'll talk about the residential amendments, and then I'll move on to the commercial amendments. Many of the amendments you'll see here on the screen, starting at the top, the air leakage requirement is reducing from 5 air changes down to 4 air changes. So we need to make sure that homes are getting a little bit tighter. And one recommendation is to be better aware of your ventilation strategy. Prescriptive attic insulation requirement is decreasing back down to 38. In the 2021, it had moved up to 49, but now, excuse me, it's moving back down to 38. Bathroom exhaust fans do need now to have a control of some kind to remove moisture from the room. So that could be an occupancy sensor of some kind that senses when people are in there. It could be a timer, it could be a humidistat. It just some kind of control to activate the exhaust fans to remove that extra moisture occurring. In section 408 of the residential provisions, in the 2021, that was new and it required some additional energy efficiency items. For the 2024, that section has been revamped so that instead of packages, now we have a point system for those following the prescriptive path. In that point system, you need to select a minimum of 2 items and they have to add up to at least 10 points. So it may be that you need more items to get to that 10 points, or you could just have 2 items. You look at the table and you choose the kind of things that you may already be doing in your home. If you're doing the performance path R405, then you just continue with your energy model, either an IC3 or through, if you're doing a HERS rating, they also have pathways to show improved code compliance. And you would need to show 15 to 25%, depending on different scenarios of the home, if it's gas, if it's electric only, or if it's a really large house over 5,000 square feet. So the amount of percentage that kind of depends on those considerations. Demand response controls are required for electric water heaters. This is a local amendment that we've had for a long time, and you may recognize that as the timer requirement. The 2024 now incorporates demand response controls. So what we have done is kind of reverse the order in the amendment so that the timer is still an allowed exception to the demand response controls, but the first initial requirement is demand response controls. Luckily, many of the water heating manufacturers, excuse me, many of the water heater manufacturers are already including these controls in their equipment. So you probably already have them without even knowing about them if you haven't really been looking. But if you don't have it, you can still install that timer for the time being. And lastly, there are some appendices that were also adopted. That demand response being one of them. We went ahead and started with the model code language, which is in the mold count now with all our great rain is making a little bit of cough. But the demand response is moved to appendix just to make sure we incorporate the references that it's has included, but also due to stakeholder interest, the electric ready and electric vehicle ready appendices were also included and adopted in the 2024 adoption cycle. Electric ready means that there's some extra electric outlets near certain appliances, fossil fuel appliances, to make sure that there is a choice for homeowners when that appliance meets the end of its life cycle. Electric vehicle ready means that we're incorporating some extra infrastructure into the building to make sure that that it is ready to install a station later on with minimal changes to the building. Incorporating these items at the original construction is way more cost effective than trying to include them later on. Next slide. Moving on to the commercial amendments, similar to the residential, air leakage was also reduced, and that is isolated to the group R and I occupancies. There were updates to the HVAC HVAC efficiency tables that align with the federal changes and with ASHRAE. Total system performance ratio, allowing for trade-offs within the HVAC system design, similar to how in the energy code you can trade off minimal envelope items within that kind of category. Say not all your windows are the same U factor. You could average those out, or if a few of them are a little higher and the others are on the edge, maybe your wall assembly is a bit better, your wall insulation. So on average, you can do a UA calculation, and you're good to go. So that kind of thought process is now applied to HVAC, especially in commercial where there's a lot more variability in the HVAC equipment. Those efficiencies can be traded off just within the HVAC system design. Similar to residential, with the additional energy efficiency section in the commercial portion of the code, that's C406. They've had a point system in the 2021 and they have updated it in the 2024. And then renewables, energy systems, and energy storage system readiness are areas that are now required in the commercial code. That means there is a renewable energy system requirement. However, the energy storage system is a readiness requirement. So that's readiness is always where infrastructure is being required, not the actual item. However, just pointing out that renewable energy systems is a new requirement coming from the model code. Lastly, just like residential, electric ready, EV ready, and demand response appendices were adopted. There are a few amendments to make sure that there's alignment with our local goals that we have here at Austin. Next slide. And next up will be Yvonne over at Austin Fire.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yvonne Espinoza, and I'm one of the engineering supervisors for engineering and plan review with the Austin Fire Department. So I'm going to highlight some of the major changes and additions that are going to happen in the 2024 IFC. The IFC establishes minimum regulations for fire prevention and protection, aiming to safeguard life, property, and public welfare from fire and explosion hazards. Next slide, please. We're going to begin with the animal care facilities. Local amendments are being added concerning these facilities and the requirements for automatic sprinkler protection and fire alarm protection, including fire alarm protection in existing facilities. So in Chapter 2, a definition was added for animal housing and care facility, which defines it in summary as a facility for 24-hour care or permanent housing to provide service for participation in sport or general boarding care. These types of facilities are listed in the definition, and there are some exemptions listed in the definition as well. Section 903.2.2.3 requires automatic sprinkler protection when animals are not provided with constant supervision. There are some exceptions for facilities serving less than 25 animals with Class A wall and ceiling finishes and a supervised fire alarm system, and for facilities serving less than 50 animals with the 1-hour fire resistant construction on boundary walls, a Class A wall and ceiling finish, and a supervised fire alarm system. Section 907.2.2.3 requires a supervised automatic smoke detection system, or in unconditioned spaces, quick response heat detectors. There is an exception for buildings with automatic sprinkler systems that activate notification appliances, both audible and visual, in non-animal areas and visual only in animal areas. And for existing facilities, Section 1103.7.7 requires the addition of a supervised automatic smoke detection system in existing facilities without constant animal supervision when any work requiring a permit is performed. We also added a local amendment that requires tertiary power system to eliminate electrical equipment rooms, fire command centers, fire pump rooms, generator rooms, and elevator machine rooms in high rises. We added an amendment addressing alternative surface fire lanes. So section 503.2.3.1 references the approved materials and installation requirements in the fire criteria manual and specifies the need for engineer oversight and a letter of concurrence when the work is complete. Alternative surfaces are now required to be 40 feet long at building corners and meet turning requirements, as well as be slip resistant. And alternative surfaces are now limited to 25% maximum protection along the building perimeter. And those without a type 1 or 2 driveway apron must have reinforced mountable curb and be marked with fire lane for the width of the fire lane and the length of the curb. For smoke control systems in high-rise buildings, there's now an exception to have a pressurized vestibule in section 909.20.4. So the local amendments referring to vestibule requirements for pressure difference and conditions for validation have been removed. The local amendment for conditions of validation, door opening force, and damper relief openings still apply and have been renumbered in line with the 2024. There was a local amendment regarding the ventilation system for pressurized systems. This was deleted and is now addressed in the base code of the 2024. And for Appendix B being used to calculate fire flow, we added a local amendment to provide some clarification. Section B 104.1 clarifies that for group R3 and R4 buildings and townhomes, the total combined fire flow area includes areas for structures not separated by 10 feet. Section B 104.2 clarifies that for fire flow calculations for buildings with firewalls, it shall be the area of the 2 adjacent portions with the most demanding fire flow when combined. And it's worth noting that there's at least 2 dozen local amendments that are being deleted in Chapter 9 that really had no added value, or clarifications are going to be made in the fire criteria manual rather than have an amendment. Next slide, please. Moving on to some of the changes that are affecting lithium-ion and lithium metal batteries and hazmat. A new section was added in the 2024 section 320 that covers the storage of lithium-ion and lithium metal batteries. This does not apply to batteries packed in or with the devices, equipment, or batteries that it is designated to power. It also does not cover lithium-ion batteries rated for not more than 300 watt hours. Temporary storage during manufacturing of your vehicle repair also do not need to meet this section. If you are required to meet section 320, you will have to obtain a above ground hazardous materials permit for any storage over 15 cubic feet. This is true for existing facilities too, that would fall under 320, even though they would not need to comply with 320. There are now restrictions for the capacity of containers for storage of lithium-ion batteries, distances to exits, and distances between groups of containers. Indoor storage areas now require a technical opinion and report on the fire and explosion hazards, 2-hour separation with some exceptions, automatic sprinkler protection, fire alarm systems using air aspirating smoke detection or radiant energy sensing fire detection or both, and explosion control if it's deemed necessary by the technical opinion and report. Batteries with less than a 30% state of charge when verifiable and approved also do not need to meet these requirements. And for outdoor storage, there is requirements for distance to exposures, limited storage size and separation, and fire detection using radiant energy sensing fire detection systems. AFD has added requirements for electrical vehicle charging in parking garages. Section 323, fixed in place battery electrical vehicle chargers, inside of parking garages was added and applies to battery electrical vehicle chargers inside of an enclosed, open, or private parking garage. It requires identification of disconnecting means, automatic sprinkler protection on the story where the battery electric vehicle chargers are located, with an interlock to deactivate charging if the sprinkler system is activated. BEV or battery electrical vehicle chargers cannot be located 2 or more stories below grade. BEV chargers cannot be located more than 2 stories above grade, but also limited to 30 feet above the grade plane in enclosed garages. Open garages can have BEV chargers more than 3 stories above grade plane, but also limited to 30 feet above the grade plane. All BEV chargers and private garages with an enclosed or open parking garage must be within 100 feet of a base vehicle ramp or exit access stairway. And there is a requirement for mechanical ventilation in private garages with fixed BEV chargers. There are several additions to requirements for automatic sprinkler protection and fire alarm protection, where lithium-ion batteries are being used, used in research purposes or being stored. So section 903.2, it's worth noting that it used to exempt telecommunications buildings used exclusively for telecom equipment and batteries if they had automatic smoke detection and 1 hour separation. This is no longer the case for lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries must meet the requirements in section 1207 for energy storage systems, so they are no longer exempt under chapter 9. Chapter 903.2.2 for B occupancies now requires laboratories doing research and development or testing to have sprinkler protection. For F1 occupancies used in manufacturing of lithium-ion batteries or vehicles, energy storage systems, or where batteries are installed as part of the manufacturing process, has to have automatic sprinkler protection. For Group M occupancies, that have to meet section 320, the storage of lithium-ion batteries, or chapter 32 for high power storage. And sprinklers are also required in Group S1 occupancies used for the storage of vehicles powered by lithium-ion batteries and exceeding 500 square feet. And there's another section that adds the same requirement for repair garages. So using the same criteria for the B, F1, M, and S1 occupancies, as for sprinkler protection, those same occupancies would also require air sampling type smoke detection or radiant energy sensing detection systems. For Group M and S, it would only be required if they must meet the requirements of chapter 320. Moving on to hazardous materials, a new table was added in 2024 with hazardous materials exemptions to the MAQ tables, the maximum allowable quantity tables. And for the most part, this table is the same as what the footnotes were in the previous versions of the code. AFD removed the exemption for common building materials classified as corrosive, the storage of industrial explosive devices in B, F, M, and S occupancies, the quantity of alcoholic beverages in distilling, fuel oil, and agricultural materials. And that's in line with what we have been enforcing this whole time. There is also a section in chapter 50 that was added to address outdoor rooftop storage, use and handling. The quantities of hazardous materials stored, used, or handled on what is classified as rooftop storage cannot be used to determine occupancy. And the MAQ cannot be exceeded on the rooftop storage except for certain cases, pollution control, exhaust and treatment and dust collection equipment, hydrogen storage for motor vehicle fueling, mechanical equipment, and industrial occupancy chemicals. There are also exceptions for swimming pool or hot tub equipment chemicals, and in other situations where approved. AFD removed combustible liquids from the list and did add where approved to several of the exceptions. Reduction in MAQs or maximum allowable quantities are reduced based on the level below the rooftop storage. And all other outdoor storage requirements have to be met, including weather protection per the building code. And the last thing for hazardous materials is that the definition for flammable gases was changed mainly to deal with flammable refrigerants. So in the definitions, the definition for flammable gas is now in line with the global harmonization classifications. If you're familiar with those, there's now a category 1A and a category 1B flammable gas. So the maximum allowable quantities tables also reflect this. So section 5003.11.2 has a maximum allowable quantity table that was added for category 1 flammable gases in group M storage and display and group S storage occupancies. The quantity limits are dependent on the type of storage and whether or not it has automatic sprinkler protection. In order to use the MAQ table for the category 1 flammable gases, there are limits for fire protection, storage height, separation that all need to be met in order to use those quantities. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to move on to the Wildland Urban Interface Code, which I will call WUI for the presentation. The WUI is intended to supplement adopted building and fire codes focusing on safeguarding life and property from wildland fire intrusion and preventing structure fires from spreading to wildland fuels. Next slide, please. So the local amendments now formalize proximity zones A through C with an expansion of zone C to cover gaps in the area of high risk. Each zone has its own section in the code covering the ignition resistant construction requirements, with zone A remaining in section 504, zone B in 505, and zone C is in 506. Sorry, I'm kind of tripping over the zone. Next slide, please. So new additions to the code include limited access residential infill projects, wall flashing or non-combustible exterior wall finish is required by the model code for Zone A exterior walls. Zone B exterior walls is now based on the model code in section 506, which also matches Zone A. And the Ember Ignition Zone, or EIZ, requires non-combustible materials and no vegetation within 5 feet of the building as measured from the eave. Zone C now has eave protection, which is similar in all zones to protect against ember intrusion into attic spaces. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the revisions made to the 2024 WUI code, including aligning the WUI driveway service limitations with the home initiatives. For site access, 2 points are required for site plans with 30 or more dwellings to match the subdivision regulations in the land development code. Zone A, unenclosed accessory structures, appendages, and projections must all be built with ignition-resistant material. In Zone B, these structures need protection only when located within 30 feet of a building with habitable space. Zone C still has requirements for these structures within 10 feet. Roof and eave requirements have now been clarified with local amendments, including previously enforced interpretations and a new stricter standard for exposed rafter tails. Next slide, please. Some requirements have been reduced compared to the 2015 WUI code. There are new exceptions for Zone C, and certain previous allowances have been formalized. For example, driveways only need to support a brush truck, not larger fire vehicles, and this would be clarified in the criteria manual. Roof replacement is now required only if 50% or more of the roof is replaced, up from the previous 25%. Boat docks in the WUI only need protected roofs and walking surfaces. In zones B and C, a shorter 10-minute fire test is now accepted for some materials instead of the previous 30-minute test. Zone C has several new and continued exceptions. Closely mowed, irrigated green grass is allowed in the newly required Ember Ignition Zone. Slope shingle roofs may qualify for reduced underlay requirements. Underfloor protection is still necessary, but no longer needs to be ignition resistant. Any exterior wall material allowed in Zone C, is acceptable. Driveways are only required if a residential building is 200 feet or more from fire access road instead of 150 feet. Decks over steep slopes can now be constructed like those over flat surfaces, no longer requiring 2 layers of ignition-resistant construction as needed in zones A and B. For residential structures, only the first 5 feet of fencing needs protection, formalizing a current allowance. And finally, soffit vents, are permitted in zone C if they have ember protection mesh or approved vent, also formalizing one of our current allowances. Next slide, please. Okay, so this QR code is going to take you to the full presentation for the WUI. And you can also reference our webpage for any additional resources. It's on the Austin Fire Department's Wildland Urban Interface Code webpage. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Yvonne, and thanks for all of our subject matter experts for the information and for going through the local amendments. And now we have time for questions from our participants and our attendees. I will note that there have been some questions that have already been answered, and you can check those out in the question and answer portion of your Zoom. We have subject matter experts here from Development Services Department. They'll turn their cameras on in a bit. We also have folks from Development Services Code Compliance and from Austin Public Health for the swimming pool and spa codes. Our subject matter experts are ready to answer any questions that you may have. If you want to go ahead and check out which ones have already been answered, you can take a look at the Q&A section. We have had some questions asked about recording, and I'll note again that this presentation is being recorded currently, including the question and answer portion. And then a copy of the recording along with a copy of the presentation will be available to folks who register to attend. We also have questions on WUI. We have questions on IRC. So go ahead and check out those questions because our staff members have also provided useful links and useful information. If you have questions, go ahead and mark them in the Q&A and I'll run through them right now. All right. So I have a question here from our attendee, and I'll go ahead and read it aloud and see if any of our panelists have any answers. Should concentrated businesses be calculated per IBC 1004.8? Do we have a subject matter expert here to answer? See, would that be you?
Yeah. I think the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry, that's not very elaborate, but yeah.
So yes, to our attendee. I'll also note that there's a few questions that we don't have. While we are trying to answer as many as possible, there's a few that we did not have the answers to. There were two that we haven't been able to answer right now as we are looking at them. There was one about NEC 680 amendment and then one about WUI zones A and B. And so we'll go ahead and note for more information later. All right, the next question that our attendee is asking is, there appears to be a waiver for commercial projects for space heating when the unit's max BTU exceeds 65,000 BTUs, meaning units 5.5 tons or larger would not need to provide electrical. Is this correct, Mark?
Hi, Isis, and hi, everybody. My name's Mark Ledger. I'm Pat's counterpart for overseeing the commercial part of the energy code. And as you can imagine, some of these exception branches can get pretty complex of what's exactly accepted. So if it's all right, could we include this in one of the questions that we answer with our follow-up?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We'll get back to you with
All
more
right,
information on that.
thanks.
Yeah. The next question that I have here on the list is, where can I get more information on pressurizing I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right, vestibules in commercial buildings to meet the new fire code updates? Yvonne, is this something that you have information on, or would we need to look for more information on that? more information on pressurizing in commercial buildings.
Sorry, I was trying to find my microphone.
No, you're good.
Yeah, no, we're gonna have to table this one as well. Most of the stuff I will say is in the local amendments addressing anything to do with vestibules. But most of it was eliminated as a local amendment in this adoption.
Gotcha. Thank you. And thanks, folks, for continuing to ask questions. We still have some time to get through them. And so the next question that I have is, do all new single families need to abide by the vistability rules? See, would that be you?
Probably Myra is a better resource for that question.
Can you repeat the question, Isis?
Yeah.
Because I am looking in the Q&A and I cannot see it.
You're good. I can read it out loud. Do all new single-family homes need to abide by the visitability rules?
Yes. So the visitability applies to dwellings that are built in compliance with the International Residential Code, new dwellings specifically, if they have habitable space in the first floor. However, visitability also applies to remodels if the home was initially built in compliance with visitability, meaning that if you do a renovation project in your home, you cannot eliminate the features that made the home visitable as part of the scope of work of your remodel. Does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, if they have a follow-up question, they can go ahead and note it down, and we'll get that addressed as well. Thank you so much, Myra.
Sure, I appreciate it.
The next question that I have here is, what requirements are being added for rooftop photovoltaic panels? When required, would the governing metric be rooftop area covered or energy output? Mark, is that y'all?
That's me too, because
Okay.
the renewable energy requirement shows up in the commercial portion of the energy code. And so the answer to that is not quite either one of those. So the governing metric is the size of the system, so like the kW size of the PV system. It's determined by multiplying a factor by the largest 3 floors of the building. So it kind of is trying to accommodate the fact that maybe a tall but kind of skinny building doesn't have a whole lot of roof area, whereas a single floor, large square foot building would have plenty of roof space for a PV system. So you take the largest 3 floors, and that's kind of the basis for that calculation. I will say that that's a prescriptive path requirement. There are a number of exceptions in the code for places, where solar is not appropriate, or it's just, shaded, or in parts of the towns, particularly our downtown network, where there are a lot of controls on solar systems. So there are a number of exceptions there. And there are also some compliance pathways where instead of a PV system, you can perform an energy model to show that some of those energy savings are being created by other parts of the building system, more efficient windows, more efficient HVAC systems, lighting, and such. So just that note that there are a number of compliance options available for that portion of the code.
Thank you, Mark, for that answer, and thank you to our attendee for asking it. I'll move on to the next one. The next question that we have is, if my master plan was approved prior to July the 10th, am I exempt from new requirements? Steve or Alan? Go ahead, Myra.
Okay, thank you for that question. I know that when we are coming closer to a new code adoption, those questions always pop up from volume builders, and they are very important. We have also discussed this question with AFD, and they have said that they will follow DSD on that. So basically, if you submit your master plan review application prior to the date of to the effective date of the new code adoption, you are already within the current code, which is the 2021 residential code. What that's going to mean is that we will continue to review your master plan sets for compliance with the 2021 code, and all of the building permit applications that you submit under that volume builder master plan review will be compliant with the 2021 code. If you want to change that, you would have to submit a revision and submit new prototypes compliant with the 2024 code, and that will pause you from submitting subsequent applications in that volume builder master plan case until we review the new prototypes. But that's something that you can opt into if you want, and it will require a revision of all of the prototypes. However, if you any volume builder master plan review application submitted by the 10th of July or later will be under the 2024 code. What that means is that any prototypes that were approved that are compliant with the 2021 code cannot be reused, even if it's a new section within the same subdivision. You will have to submit new 2024 compliant prototypes. Let me know if that answered your questions, Frole.
Thank you so much, Myra. Appreciate that. I'll move on to the next one. And this one, Yvonne, let us know if you have information for this, because this one's for WUI. Our attendee says that property profile currently only shows red and orange for the WUI areas. Will there be 3 colors soon for zones A, B, and C?
So I want to apologize. I don't have a subject matter expert here for the WUI, but because they did give their live presentation on June 9th, they are going to publish a set of questions and answers that came out from that live presentation. So I will take the questions that I'm getting here and add them to their Q&A that is going to be up on the webpage. And so I am taking note of the questions and they'll be addressed soon. I did want to point out that if you go to the WUI, the fire department WUI page, there is a link to the new map that will be in use after July 10th. So you can access that new map if you want to take a look at it on the website now.
Okay, thanks, Yvonne. Does that also include the green grass and zone B question? They had an attendee ask, would you allow green grass? in zone B?
Yes, I'm gonna have to take all the WUI questions back to the
Okay.
WUI group.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we had an attendee ask how we access a full recording of the webinar. They joined in late. So for folks who joined in late, we will publish a recording of this webinar in our public meeting page, but we will also post it to or send it out to folks who registered as well. So if you missed some parts of it, or if you had to step out and then step back in, all of that will be recorded. And then as we are answering these questions, if you want to let us know how we did, we have that survey that has questions to let us know if this information was helpful for you and things, and for prompts to help us do better. And then if you want to learn more about technical codes and other sessions that we have that Speak Up Austin page available as well. So we'll leave that up as we continue asking. We have a few more minutes for questions. The next question that we have is, for commercial projects, do the new ESS ready areas need to have specific fire protection detectors mentioned today on the call installed now, or just have infrastructure to install it at a future time of ESS installation? Mark, I see you turn your camera on. Is that for you?
Yeah, there's a portion of this where it talks about the energy storage ready requirements in the commercial portion of the energy code. And this is one portion where there is a lot of overlap with some of the fire portions of the code. But speaking to just the energy code portions of it, it does not specifically call out that portion, the fire protection detectors, as being a necessary part of that. So maybe as a best practice, perhaps, if you are planning for in the future having a storage system in that portion of your building, and it's cheaper to include that in your new construction, that might be something to consider. But technically, like the code requirements there are don't mention that. So, but I'll also maybe put an asterisk here and let me take an opportunity to look at the code requirements again, and I'll add to that answer if there's anything else that I note.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Good reminder that there's a few questions that have been answered as well. So if you can take a look at them, if you can take a look at the questions that have already been answered, those are in the Q&A section. And for the ones that we didn't quite get to answer, we'll go ahead and provide a summary of those answers and maybe more context, including links. We had an attendee ask for the link for the WUI map. I'll go ahead and post that in the chat for everyone to see, but I will also include it in the summary for the questions that we had. So thank you for that question. We'll go ahead and share that as well. All right. Next question that we have is one that I'm not sure if our subject matter experts know, but I'm going to go ahead and ask Steve, or maybe from the energy side, do y'all know more information on climate change, on whether there's any information on how the building codes help with climate change?
Isis.
Go ahead, Moses.
So I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to answer it, but there's been this workshop that me and Keisha have been brought into because of our AC adoption. And there's different people, different stakeholders, and they are like connected with UT, and they've been doing these studies on thermal safety for existing multifamily and residential. So we've been part of that group, asking us questions. Where did we copy this? How is it going? We're one of the I think we're the second in the state that are adopting this, or the third. I know San Antonio has it, and Dallas, and us that have adopted this. But that's why we coincided with the IBC and IRC. Like I said before, if they could have built a house and gotten a C of O without AC being provided. Now it is mandatory that if you rent a property, and there is no AC, we can enforce that. Hopefully that answers it. But we've been part of that with Austin Energy, and I think Health has been in it on these big revamp climate changes that are going throughout the country, because there was a guy from Arizona, there's another guy from New Mexico, one from New York, and they're bringing up these issues, and it's been facilitated through, I think, UT and other staff. There's like a professor on this, so there's already things are being looked at from not just the state level but national level. Hopefully that answers a little bit.
Okay.
And maybe I'll
Yeah.
add to that a little bit too. This question of climate change, there are just so many components to it. But I think this is an example of all of our technical codes kind of working together to help address this problem. And we were just talking about like some of the AC requirements there, and being able to address some of the problems with heat. With the energy code, it's seeking to reduce the amount of energy that we use in our buildings, and so any reduction that we get there reduces the amount of electricity that has to be produced, whether that is at a large plant, and there are carbon consequences of that, or if we're changing over to some sources such as solar or other renewable energy sources to address that. So it's a big question that a lot of departments at the city are looking at, and so this is just kind of one part of it that's helping to address that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question. We have we still have a few minutes for questions, and so I'll go to the next one. Appreciate y'all for asking the questions, and our staff members for going through and answering the best they can. The next question is about air conditioning. Does the new requirements for air conditioning for the residential projects mean that signed and sealed mechanical drawings will need to be submitted for a building permit?
I don't think so. This is Steve. That requirement is really the driver of these amendments, because they were put into multiple codes, was really the code division and the property maintenance code, and it's really intended as an amendment that just gives them some enforcement tools for responding to tenant complaints. So the purpose of that amendment was not to significantly increase the documentation requirements for construction projects, for new construction projects.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. And then I'll remind y'all that we have that survey, and if you want to learn more about our upcoming session, we will also have an upcoming session about, it'll be the same presentation with folks who are in this room, but live and in person. We'll be at the Permitting and Events and Development Center at 9 a.m. on Monday, June 16th. If y'all want to join us, we'll be here. And then we have a few folks asking for a copy of the presentation on WUI, so Yvonne will get with the Austin Fire Department for more information on where folks can find that presentation. We'll follow up on that as well. And then also a copy of this presentation along with the recording will be emailed to folks who attended and also folks who registered. So some of your friends or colleagues who maybe weren't able to make it, but they did register, they'll be able to see it, and then it'll be available on our public meetings page. All right, I don't see any more questions in terms of the ones that we are able to answer, and we have noted the ones that we need to get more information on. With that, I'll go ahead, next slide, please. I'll go ahead and close it out. Thanks everybody for taking the time out of your Thursday morning to meet with our staff members and to learn more about the technical codes implementation. If you want to attend our in-person, or if you want to send a colleague, feel free to do so. We'll be here on Monday. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time and have a good rest of your day.